Welcome back onto the African Universities Week Celebration 2024. My name is Dr. A.G.E.N.D.A, and let me just bring you this very important information from the AAU TV. In this celebration, we also want to let you know that AAU TV has a lot to offer you. And if you're tired of watching mainstream TV and you want to watch something more educative, more insightful, something that gives you more knowledge about what happens between the African continent and a whole lot more, then you should be tuning into the AAU TV platform. That's how it is done. The AAU TV brings you special programs, interviews, documentaries, other insightful packages to help you broadening your horizon, appreciating what's happening within the cultural, academic space in Africa. The AAU TV reaches over 25 countries in Africa, bringing you a blend of knowledge and fun. So education just got fun, edutainment all in one piece. Are you an institution, member university, you want to do a documentary, you want to be hosted on the AAU TV's AAU Talks platform, you want your faculty to be interviewed to boost your visibility, you want to record a voiceover, the AAU TV studios is state-of-the-art platform where you can gain all this access to get all these media tools you need. So contact the AAU TV now on their social media platform. Go to Facebook, YouTube as AAU TV, Association of African University Television, and also you can also reach them on these numbers. So please put it down: +233 26 629 6601 01 and +233 20 399 520. I'll tell the numbers again: +233 26 629 6601 and also +233 20 399 5210. And the icing on the cake is that AAU TV has a special program called the Hello Africa. It's a morning show. So if you want to be featured on a morning show as a member university, to market a program or anything you want to do through the morning show, you can have yourself given that platform to be known and given that visibility you deserve. AAU TV is your #1 voice for higher education in Africa. And on that note, you're all welcome back to the Week Celebration session. My name is A.G.E.N.D.A, and today we just had the session with Taylor and Francis earlier on navigating medical and healthcare scholarly communication. And what we have up next is a session hosted by the AAU's very own Southern Africa Regional Office, hosted by the Women's University of Africa, Zimbabwe. And it will be on strategies for stimulating women's participation in STEM for sustainable development. And I believe that our speakers are ready. Let me just take a short minute to let you know who they are. So we have a great set of ladies and women who are here to help us appreciate your work done thus far. The first on the list, so we have Cicelo Dube. Cicelo Dube, aka STEM lady. She's known as STEM lady. You know how she cemented herself within the STEM environment. Cicelo Dube is a passionate scientist and entrepreneur. She is the Karen Zimbabwe Science Ambassador and a Mandela Washington Fellow Leader, championing science, technology, engineering, mathematics, education, innovation, and entrepreneurship amongst young people. Cicelo, we're glad to have you join us. So if Cello's in the house, put your hands up and then we can grant you co-host status. Joining Cello is Dr. Helen Venganai. She is the director of the Gender and Diversity Center at the Women's University in Africa. She holds a PhD sociology from the Stellenbosch University, South Africa. We're glad to have you, Dr. Helen Venganai. And we also have Engineer Prudence Kadebo. She is the Deputy Director of Research and Innovation at the Arupe Jesuit University with a background in computer science and software engineering from MTech. She is an academic and a tech visionary dedicated to exploring emerging technologies and their inherent risk. Glad to have you, Engineer Prudence. So this, as we have a set already for the session, and this session will be ideally will be coordinated by Dr. Helen Venganai. So, Dr. Helen, if you're in the house, you can put your hands up, and I would switch to moderate. But I can see Sandra Shoko's hand up. I think she'll be part of the guest. So let's give Sandra co-host status. And give spotlight to our guests. I think that we have the AAU main screen on board. Can we please switch and give our guest the spotlights to start the session?
Thank you very much, Dr. Dako, for this opportunity. My name is Dr. Helen Venganai. As you rightly introduced me, I'm the director for the Gender and Diversity Center at the Women's University in Africa, and I'll be moderating the session and hoping that connectivity issues will not interfere with our discussion. I just wanted to check if Engineer Prudence is in the meeting, and then I'll take over. If I can just have a minute to check with her, and then we can start.
Hello, Dr. Helen. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you very much. She will be having another meeting, I think, in an hour's time. So we want to really capitalize on the time that we have. So I have these two phenomenal women that are going to be speaking to the issues around strategies for stimulating women's participation in STEM for sustainable development. And just yesterday, you know, I was listening to the AAU Secretary General, and he actually mentioned issues around participation of women and girls, particularly when it comes to education, the challenges that they are facing, but also the implications of them not acquiring an education. And then just this morning, again, the presentation that we heard about from Taylor and Francis around publishing in STEM subject areas. And again, when we look at all these things, you know, the questions will be around, you know, how are women actually participating in STEM, and in what ways are they actually participating? So this is the kind of discussion that we want to understand. And obviously, before we even move to the, you know, to the strategies, we want to understand where the problem is, because you can't provide solutions when you don't know where, you know, the problems are. And I hope that, you know, the participants who are in this webinar today, you can also be sharing, you know, the experiences that you have, and also some of the things that you're doing in your own institutions to ensure that we actually have more participation of women and girls in STEM education. So we're going to be having this webinar as a discussion, not necessarily a presentation, so that we hear from our presenters what they have to share, and also hoping that our participants can also, you know, get in the discussion to also bring in certain debates. So I'll invite the participants to also share what is happening. You can use the chat box, which is there. So I want to invite Engineer Prudence. I think we have already had their profiles, their wonderful profiles, and their experience in the STEM field. And there is Sandra, who is actually for now representing Sicelo, because apparently Sicelo had some challenges with her connectivity, so she'll help in that discussion, hoping that Sicelo can join maybe much later. So I wanted the first question, probably to just get our discussion going, is to say, why is it even important for us to be talking about women's participation in STEM for sustainable development? What is it, what are the benefits for increasing the number of women and girls participating in STEM education and careers in Africa? So I'll start with Engineer Prudence.
Thank you very much, Dr. Helen, and thank you very much to AAU for inviting me. Yeah, this is a very important topic which needs all hands on deck to tackle it. And I'm happy that this is going to be a discussion. It means we can all come together, share our experiences, and also find strategies of addressing this very important subject. So for me, I think it's really critical that we should consider the critical roles that women play in STEM, especially when we are looking at sustainable development. For me, I can look at it from a perspective of even tackling global challenges. I feel like women are an agent of change, especially when we look at how women are very robust, they are very resilient in the work that they do on a daily basis, in the families, at work, in their different roles. So when I look at that resilience and the kind of attention to detail that women have in accomplishing their tasks, to me it means women can actually take a center stage in terms of addressing challenges such as even climate change, poverty reduction, issues related to diseases, just the fact that women are the ones who are responsible mainly, for taking care of from the family, the children, all that. So now translate that into the STEM field. For me, I feel like women can actually play a very critical role, which is why we really need to be thinking about involving women more in STEM and also trying to address the pronounced gender gap that we are seeing in STEM fields. And I've also noticed that women have got this, I don't know if it's an advantage to them or it's an extra grace that they've been given by God, where when they are given a task, women will always, run with it to the end. They are always goal-oriented. So think about the areas or the problems that we face on a day-to-day basis as Africans or throughout the entire globe. You can actually see that if we are to harness some of the capabilities of women, we can be able to solve many of the problems that we face in the areas of STEM. For now, I think I can stop here to allow Sandra to also contribute.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Engineer Prudence. I love the background, by the way, so African. So I'm representing the STEM lady. I hope everyone can hear me. Just a thumbs up. Everyone can hear me?
Oh, yes, we can hear you, Sandra.
All right. That's great. So I'm Sandra Shoko, the startup Bay. I work for Elevate Trust, which is a CSR that the STEM lady runs. And I think it's pretty relevant in this discussion because what Elevate Trust aims and is working towards is inspiring more girls to take up STEM. And after taking up STEM, inspiring them to enterprise in STEM, because education alone without equating to the money is really quite pointless. There's no encouragement there. So that's the work we're doing and taking STEM to the community. So just last year, we have reached out to 2,800 students in the rural areas, young girls that don't have STEM access. And currently, we're even in Blue Warrior, we're doing African Girls Can Code bootcamp, so we're empowering 500 students on the digital skills. So this is a background of who we are. And maybe to the question now, why is important, right? So I will use both statistics and I'll also use psychological reasons. Firstly, currently we've got 35% of our percentages of women actually graduating from STEM subjects, just 35%. We have made progress, but we've not made enough because we're looking at gender parity in that. To speak of, and that's globally. In Africa, we're looking at just 20% of women actually graduating from there. And then we go to even say who's taking up jobs in STEM before your family issues take up space, all those things take up space. It's even lower. It goes lower and lower. So that's important. The first thing is it's important because we still have that parity, right? And especially if you look at it, there's an aspect of location, just gender parity and then location parity. Girls in urban areas may be more empowered, but girls in rural areas and marginalized areas and peri-urban areas, the gap is tremendous. It's still huge, and that's why it's important. Psychologically, they say empower a woman, empower a nation. Women are naturally mothers, whether they're going to have children or not have children. They want to do something and grow others, right? I'll take the example of the STEM Ladyz Digest to explain more about her, right? As I've told you, the impact we've had just as Elevate Trust to reach out to a lot of goals around. Naturally, when women have something, they want to share and they want to empower. So if you put the word sustainability in it, you have to think of women because naturally it's in our hormones and in our impetus and minds and emotion to want to grow. So that is why it's still important. There's still the parity, and there's the fact that psychologically women are going to just want to nurture and grow continuously. So sustainability is on that. So with that, I think that answers the first question.
Thank you very much. And I think it's interesting how you are linking, you know, the need for participation of women and girls in STEM to global challenges that they also have to play, you know, a part in addressing some of the global challenges through participation in STEM and harnessing the capabilities of women. And Sandra, I think you also raised another important issue in terms of the rural-urban divide when it comes to STEM issues and you know, taking a STEM to the people. And I think we'll come back to that later in the discussion. I think you know, I was also looking, you know, even in terms of our, you know, regional mandate as Africa. Looking, I think, even at Agenda 63, which actually talks about inclusivity as well as, you know, gender equality in all spheres of life. And also, you know, our Southern African Development Community Protocol on Gender and Development, I think there is actually a specific article that specifies that member states should, you know, ensure that they come up with initiatives actually to ensure that women and girls participate in STEM. So I think this is really quite important in that this discussion is actually feeding into what is expected in terms of the regional, you know, regional agenda when it comes to women empowerment, gender equality issues, and so forth. But I wanted to also maybe understand from you what the status of women's participation is, particularly in the African region. Can you take us through, maybe in terms of the progress that is there, what has happened in terms of women's representation in STEM education, to, you know, STEM research, to leadership and careers, particularly in higher education at various levels? Engineer Prudence.
Thank you very much, Dr. Helen. Yes, there's quite a lot of progress that we have seen in higher and tertiary education in terms of, you know, increasing the participation of women in STEM. But if we are to look at, I'll just start with globally, since Africa is also represented there. When we look at globally, we have statistics that show that women make up only about 34% of the workforce in science, in fact, in STEM, 34%, which would mean we are looking at about 66% being male workforce in STEM. So that alone shows that there's a much underrepresentation of women in STEM fields. And we can even look at it at the stages of various, STEM fields represented. There are some that are likely to have more women participation than others. But for me, the greatest concern with regards to participation of women in STEM starts even from the instructors themselves, or the lecturing force within the tertiary institutions. You realize that the number of women who are there teaching STEM programs are very, very low. You find in some, I remember from my time at Harare Institute of Technology, there was a time when you'd find in a department with almost 15 staff members, you could find only 2 ladies in there. I remember at some point when I was a chairperson for software engineering, I was the only chairperson at the time out of, I think, 4 chairpersons in the School of Information Science and Technology. I come from the ICT, field of STEM. So just looking at that alone shows that there is very much limited participation of women in STEM. And that is even a reason why most females would then get discouraged to join STEM. It's like there are no role models, basically. That's what it means. There's no one to look up to really show that this is a field that is lucrative, and this is a field where somebody can actually have impact and also be able to earn enough. So I would say globally, there's much underrepresentation of women in STEM, and it's even more pronounced when we come to Africa. Why? Because in Africa now, we face too many barriers, which then even make it less, in fact, lesser, as we saw in the 34%. I don't have the actual African statistic. Maybe Sandra will help with that. But for me, I would say from where we are standing, especially in my field, that could even be possibly 10 to 15% representation of women or participation of women in STEM. So we do have too many barriers, and I think we can tackle the barriers later on, which is really the reason why there's a low participation. But I will hasten to also say that in as much as there's low participation, we are seeing much progress that is happening, and a number of initiatives coming even from the government, level, being cascaded until we get even to schools at primary level, where people are trying very much to try to influence participation of more women and getting girls to take an interest in STEM at an early stage. I will talk more about that. Let me give Sandra a chance to also share.
Thank you, Engineer. I won't add a lot, but just to cement the whole idea of, I think in Africa, from the last stats I checked from the World Bank, from last year in 2023, we're at 25% as Africa. That's the average of STEM graduates, actually, that we have. And the leading countries that are almost achieving gender equality in STEM, so to say, South Africa and Mauritius. South Africa is standing at 44.1%, and Mauritius, I haven't gotten the states. But there's also that issue of equality versus equity, yeah? And I think that's quite an important thing, because sometimes, and what we're seeing is the numbers are great when sometimes you see at graduation, they're a bit more. When it comes to work, getting into places, they get less. When it comes to staying in the workplace, they get even lower. So it's all those things that also need to be addressed as we're looking at the stats in Africa. And I think a key message that even Engineer Prudence alluded to right now is the idea of, you want to see someone who looks like you. who talks like you, who has been in your situation doing great things. So what I'm speaking to is mentorship and role model structuring, right? We need more of that. We need to see more African young women succeeding, doing things so that girls can actually see that this happens. The reason why we see a lot of things happening is also they don't have these role models. You're thinking, how does this happen? So that's a big issue that needs to be addressed as far as that. But otherwise, progress-wise, to answer the question straightly, I think we've recorded 3 to 4% over the past decade, which might not seem like a lot, but it's quite a bit. But we also need, as we're growing, we need to look at it. How are we putting it as equity, not just equality, not just recording numbers, but actually valuable increase in that?
That's very interesting. Thank you. I think what is really important is that we are not at the same level. We are seeing some kind of progress, though we have not probably gotten to where we want to be. But I think it is important to actually highlight those little progress, because it also, motivates others even to do more in terms of getting women in STEM. And I want to then, I think, zoom in on the issues of barriers. I know there was one thing that was mentioned in terms of lack of role models, but what is it? What are the other, key barriers that we see, whether it's in society or whether it's within the educational institutions that we work with? Sandra, you can start maybe for this one. What are some of those barriers that are limiting participation of women in STEM?
Okay, so I think the first one, as you highlighted, that we've already pointed out, is the whole idea of mentorship. There really needs to be more mentors, and just a quote to say, each and every one of us in the STEM field has a role to play in this. It's not a university's only angle. It's not just a CSO angle. It's an everyone angle. So we at Elevate Trust, we've got something we call the STEM Fem Network, where, after inspiring the girls, they're staying in the cohort. They have a community. They have mentors that look up to them. So we're connecting the established STEM players to the young girls so that because they'll keep having questions, they'll keep having barriers beyond what they're learning in class, because classrooms can only cover so much. But another thing, and this I'll put it as a scenario really from experience, is the moment we also have just natural, cultural, and social settings in the African society, right? So in as much as I grow as Sandra and I'm becoming the CEO and board member, right? And there's this equality, as I said, in numbers. My role as a woman limits how far I can go. If I'm sitting on a board of directors with a fellow man, my duties require me to be physically present in the house to be a good mother. A man can go for a month without being at home, sending money, and still be called a good father. But if I'm to be away because I need to do my research in the lab, I need to go collaborate with other labs, I need to go to Harvard and do whatnot and come back and bring it to Africa. And having big roles. But can women take this big roles? Because they're thinking to themselves, I can only do so much without being labeled a terrible parent or a terrible wife or a terrible sister-in-law. So those cultural barriers are such a big issue that, just exists because of our African society. So there needs to be more awareness in that, more articulation into that. And I have no idea how we can then bridge that, because it's also in our culture. So for me, those are the two barriers I just want to allude to right now.
Thank you very much. Let me go to Engineer Prudence, and I'll probably also allude to some of the comments that are coming from our participants, because we say this will be interactive, and we also want to hear insights from others. You can proceed, Engineer.
Okay, thank you, Doc. And thanks, Sandra, for highlighting that. I think that is, in fact, those are maybe the key or most, prominent barriers that we face as women. You spoke about the cultural issues, which then brings in the aspect of stereotypes and biases. These stereotypes and biases, I would say, it's something which really comes from the way that we've been socialized growing up. I can use my own experience to explain on this. Even as we were growing, I remember during our times, I think it's kind of changing now. It was very rare to find a girl that is making cars. It was very rare. You'd find girls, playing with dolls and all these things. So as we grow even older, that really means males would then mostly, naturally tend to align or incline more towards something that involves building something. So even when you think about innovation, it's not something that just comes from nowhere, that you wake up one day and you become an innovator. For most people, it's because they've been exposed to the kind of environment that makes innovation become ingrained in their nature. But when you look at girls now, it's like, okay, we are socialized to be the caring part, to be the people who are always there, looking after others and the like, which is why women naturally then fall into the likes of humanities, of arts, because that's how we've been socialized, which is something that needs to change now. I'm happy that now we've been like in higher tertiary, we've been hosting like hackathons. For instance, we've recently hosted a Techspo, which is a technology expo, where we are saying when we introduce robotics to these young ones, catching them young when they are in primary school and secondary, we inculcate in them the desire to want to build things that move, to build things that they can see, that things that are tangible. So that then means even as they go on to choose the careers that they will do later on, or programs that they will do at university, these people are no longer scared. They have more confidence in themselves to say, this is doable. We've done it before with alongside the males. So for me, breaking down these barriers in terms of stereotypes and bias is something that would then imply that we catch them young and remove, the kind of thinking which says only men can do this sort of work and women can do that sort of work. We need to then embrace that we can work together, men being allies, helping the women in cases where sometimes the STEM career that they choose might require maybe physical, a strength, which sometimes women may fail to have. So we then have them complementing each other. And I also wanted to say one of the barriers is the support system of having role models, and that is very critical. When we have role models, they can be the one of the support structures that a woman would need, to excel in the STEM field. But it also goes back to the homes as well, where we are saying, do we even have people who can support you if you decide that you want to go and pursue further studies in a particular STEM field, which would be very involving? Do you have somebody who can assist you in terms of, financial support? So the support structure is something that would really anchor a woman to do a STEM, because the STEM is very involving. And unless you actually have a good support system, you may fail to really tackle it. And then I want to just draw your attention to these statistics. This statistic which says, on average, women earn about 20% less than men in STEM occupations worldwide. So really, that means there's a gender pay gap, which becomes a barrier, because when you come into the work environment and you realize for the same job or the same duties, sometimes maybe a different title to it, but you are pretty much doing the same, you find that a woman can get or earn less than a man in the same organization. So this can actually be barriers which would need everyone to come together from government in terms of policy implementation that can shift such, so that we can have more women pursuing STEM. And then also the work-life balance issues. I think that's also a part of what I was just explaining. Thank you, Doc.
I think those are very, very key, barriers that you're actually raising, and especially talking about the gender stereotypes. Personally, there was a time in my high school that I actually wanted to pursue STEM, and I had, very negative perceptions from the maths teacher that I was supposed to actually progress into doing. I wanted to do maths, biology, chemistry. But he told me that, I can't afford to have a low pass rate because you girls want to come and join my class. And that actually then drove me away from STEM. So that was, a whole lot of time ago when there were no actually support structures or even initiatives to be talking about participation of women and girls in STEM. There's, I think, a comment here from Samkeli Sogono, who is saying entry requirements for STEM programs are also a barrier because they require mathematics and most girls shy away from those subjects. Maybe there's need to then revisit teaching methodologies for such key subjects, not to, to be scary to women, the way that it's actually being portrayed, that STEM are for, STEM fields are for men. And I think it's very important to highlight those gender pay gaps because those are some of the things that actually need to be addressed. But I wanted to really focus now on, as we celebrate African universities, what is the role of African universities in addressing these challenges? How or to what extent do you actually think that African institutions of higher learning are actually addressing some of these barriers that you have actually highlighted? If you could probably, if you've got somewhere, even practical examples of how African universities are actually faring in terms of promoting the participation of women in STEM. And I'm also inviting again, even contributions from participants. If I could start with Engineer Prudence, since you are, within a university structure, before I move on to Sandra.
Okay, thank you very much, Doc. Yeah, I think African institutions of higher learning are really, trying very hard, to address these barriers to women's participation in STEM, as evidenced by the number of initiatives, the number of programs that we are seeing right now in universities, even some of them being spearheaded by the government and also being cascaded down into the institutions of higher learning. But I must allude to the mentorship programs. I think Sandra has already touched on issue of mentorship programs. Yes, we do have quite a lot of initiatives which are actually being embarked on by institutions of higher learning, where, for instance, I remember during my time at UZ, we had a program where, the more, I would say, more experienced teaching staff, like our professors, our doctors, would then be paired with a younger, a lecturer, maybe a teaching assistant or somebody who is still, trying to make their way through, their careers. So these people would kind of mentor them through the process, as well as sometimes even going further to job shadow them. When I say job shadowing, I'm merely saying this mentee could actually come sometimes and work with the senior mentor, or possibly just observing them doing their work and learning from them on how they tackle different things. That way, you can actually build confidence and understand, some of the challenges that people face within your area, and you may also learn how these challenges are addressed, how your mentor has navigated through a very difficult terrain in their STEM career. So I think a number of universities are adopting this strategy now. of pairing, you know, a junior and senior faculty, so that they can be able to share experiences. And one other good thing from having such a kind of a mentorship program in place is that through, you know, the experience of the senior mentors, you can also have the younger one benefiting from the guidance, benefiting from the kind of network that you know, the senior mentor would bring along. But for me, I feel like just having a good network sometimes is the most important thing in one's career, because you know exactly what others are doing out there. You can hear about what opportunities others in that field you know, following and the like. So having a mentorship program that is robust, one which can be monitored, is one of the areas that most universities are leveraging. And then I can also add to each issue of also having a curricula that is gender sensitive, one that would then ensure that, you know, gender perspectives are incorporated. I've seen, I think the likes of MSU and a number of other universities are now having a module on, I think, gender studies or something like this. It should be the same even with WUA. You see this happening, and you can actually see how much effort universities are putting towards, you know, addressing the gender gap. Then also the issue of scholarships and fellowships, which comes mainly where our universities are able to partner with other universities, not just regionally, but also globally. So even for us at Arupe, we do have such an arrangement where we have a partnership with a number of Jesuit universities globally, which has seen some of our staff members benefiting, you know, from fellowships, which normally somebody would not be able to, you know, benefit from if they were not affiliated with these universities. So I actually see quite a lot of progress in the initiatives which universities are taking, including even at policy level, from I would say maybe from the Ministry of Higher and Tertiary and many other bodies like ZimChair and the like. You can see how they are doing very much work towards including women in various initiatives. I'm just coming from one meeting just, I think, an hour ago. It started at 12, where we were looking at crafting an AI framework for Zimbabwe, which would then be applied in our you know, institutions of higher learning in Zimbabwe, so that we can have a kind of a guideline to help us in achieving academic integrity, in ensuring that you know, people are thinking about ethical considerations when using AI. So these are the kind of things which you can see the efforts which our universities, the government and the like are doing in order to increase you know, participation of women in STEM and address the barriers. I've already spoken about the hackathons that we have been having. This also increase participation of women, and to make it more you know, acceptable for women to be doing certain things like robotics, engineering, like, you know, civil engineering, electronics, engineering and the like. I will allow Sandra to also share.
All right, thank you so much, Engineer. I mean, just to add on, I will first off start with the quotation I heard at one of the conferences I attended as on entrepreneurship, and they said they would not have been a Silicon Valley without Stanford University. Similarly, there cannot be any African empowerment entrepreneurship without our African universities. So universities are at the core, at the center of everything that we're doing, because they boast the young people who by 2030 will constitute 42%, meaning 1 in every person in Africa will be under 35. So that's like the importance of universities. And then to look at what universities are doing. So as Elevate Trust, we might not be a university, but we have tremendous support from the universities. Engineer Prudence, for example, is part of our mentors for STEM firm. We work with her. We have the STEM Kumusha project, which I told you that last year we did 2,800 students. Over the years since we established, since 2017, we've reached nearly 12,000 young women from around all the provinces in Zimbabwe. And that's enabled and powered by our mentorship programs that we have with STEM firm, with university members. So those programs that we've run with them are quite important. We've also run with, I think with Harrow Institute of Technology, we run what we call the Student Startup Summit, because at the end of the day, and I'll quote the STEM lady on this, it is not science if it's not going to the community. Right. And education is really pointless if it's not creating jobs and addressing community problems. So there's one thing of recording people that are taking up STEM. There's another thing of recording people taking up STEM and creating change and impact with STEM. And that's the angle. When we're speaking about the theme of AU this year, that's what we're supposed to go through. And that's where universities make sense. And we need to be impacting on that. So we've also seen universities, and that's what we're doing with HealthAfrik, our Student Startup Summit, which I had as the startup pillar head. And we also run a couple of other programs for different universities. At NAST, we've got the Grassroots Launchpad. And I think an important thing that we have in universities, which I love, that the Minister of Higher and Tertiary has done, is we have innovation hubs. So a lot of times you see a gap between academia and industry, right? And that needs to be bridged. We have, I don't know how many papers are published, how many dissertations are done, and just stored up and they cut that dust. And that should not be the situation. So the innovation hubs that have been established are a fundamental great angle that's being done. I've had the chance to being invited to the Alliance for Entrepreneurial Universities. And that's something that we're looking at that says, as you do your research, let's also capitalize on making it make sense for the problems we're facing as Africa. And that is what we're angling at. So I think to close off, I'll just highlight that in Zimbabwe particularly, we work really well with the Minister of Higher and Tertiary Science and Education. Like they literally support a lot of the programs that we do. And there's a lot being done. And as long as it's also facing towards bridging the gender parity and also innovation angle at being in the community, creating change, that's important. Maybe it's a very last point, just to highlight that universities are not just for their students, they're for the community. That's a very important point. They need to be impacting the community around them and seeing how they can harness and work around and impact the community. Yeah, that's just to close off.
Yes, and on that, thank you very much, Sandra, for raising the issue, especially on, community, being in the community. And I think it just as a follow-up question to both of you, universities also may be doing enough in terms of, also building capacity in STEM for the ordinary kind of woman, because we are talking about the issues of inclusivity, right? And yes, I think the broader part of what we've been talking about has been relating to, female students who are actually doing STEM. But we talk about artificial intelligence now, we talk about technology, there's a lot of, digital literacy that is actually required within the community for women to actually, address their own kind of problems. So I wanted to just find out from you, in terms of your comment in whether universities are actually doing enough to support an ordinary woman outside, the students or career women within STEM field.
Okay, thank you, Doc. In terms of the strategies that our universities are applying in this regard, I would say it's mainly about creating an inclusive environment where every woman is able to engage in STEM training. Every woman is able, to make a choice. Okay, so I would say, yes, universities are actually doing that. We can see the evidence of, the efforts that universities are making towards creating an inclusive environment. So you see that, like I said, in terms of, in creating gender-sensitive curriculum, you can see that just having, you know, a course like gender studies means, you know, they are really trying to create that inclusive environment, to have everyone being aware and, you know, embracing the aspect of gender equality, and also to have a proper and sound understanding of the, you know, some of the barriers that women face, and the stereotypes which then work against them as well. So I think creation of an inclusive environment is one area, as well as also that aspect of creating support networks for women. That is really one of the efforts which universities are making, which you can see that, yeah, they are really trying very hard to support women, to ensure that they are also reaching out to everyone. I think that idea of not leaving anyone behind, you know, universities are really trying to do that. In as much as I would say the sphere of influence of most universities covers mainly the urban centers, the urban areas. Just like here in Harare, you find that most of the students that you find in our local universities are mostly from around Harare. Of course, you'd find a few coming from, you know, other places that are more remote. But you can actually see how universities are trying very much to expand outside of their main campus areas. I've seen campuses for even MSU at Gwanda. I remember I saw a campus there. You find a UZ campus somewhere in a you know, even in a Kariba or something like this. Not to say exactly it's in Kariba, but you can see the efforts that universities are making towards, you know, creating that inclusive environment for every woman to get a chance, even going to the extent of taking out some of the initiatives which have originally started within, you know, towns like here in Harare. You see hackathons also, you know, going outside to remote areas to have a perspective of people who are, you know, in a more marginalized areas in our communities. And universities also partnering with such organizations like our portals, for instance, which are able to expand community networks out of you know, the main urban centers into even remote areas, and having, you know, these universities now bringing such initiatives like hackathons, like trainings, even training the educators themselves as far as the areas like Binga and the like. So I would say, yes, universities are really making that effort to, you know, create an inclusive environment, and they're also going, you know, all out to partner with other organizations which can help. I remember also being involved in an initiative on renewable energy, which is a trust that we registered some time ago, which is the IC Zimbabwe, that is ICT, Sustainable Energy and Education Zimbabwe. Pretty much coming from the idea to say, nowadays almost all you know, our public examinations include ICT, you know, as an area that is examined. But then we have people who have never seen computers having to write the same exams as somebody who has owned a computer or a tablet from the time they were 2 years old. So how can we address those challenges, which is where renewable energy then comes in, which is another area of STEM, where we were looking at how we can then expand knowledge on solar power, how we can teach young people how to set up a basic solar system, which can power up a home, which can light up something, and also enable schools to be able to at least have a laboratory with a computer to show the students exactly what is a mouse, what is a computer, what is a CPU, so they can see these things rather than just learning from paper or having the teacher who has one book sharing that information. So you can see the, you know, the efforts that universities are making in trying, you know, to roll out initiatives and also partner other organizations to that end. Thank you.
Okay, so before I come to Sandra, because I'm also aware of the time, because I know at 2 p.m. you have to be in another meeting. So I just wanted to go to some of the questions that are being asked here so that you can respond. So there's a question. I think it's really relating to the strategies that can stimulate participation of women. So the question is, can starting at early age to introduce STEM education at the basic level revamp more female in STEM or STEM education globally? And I think I'll start with Sandra here, because I think I know you are doing quite a lot in terms of working with girls, young girls, even though you work with also even university female students in STEM. Can starting early help?
Definitely. I mean, the answer without a single knot of doubt is yes, in capital letters and 3 exclamation marks. Definitely. And I think Engineer Prudence even gave the scenario to say, just the way the culture you've grown up to, how we give girls doors instead of like a machine or cars, it kind of does something to your mind. So even in the first school you get is your home. So definitely that helps. That needs to be done. And you'll see that even now, our numbers are increasing also because of the idea of what the young children are being exposed to, the shows they watch. Even I was laughing that even when you watch your Disney shows, etc., they don't have a princess being saved by a prince anymore. They empowered women. Like it's all these things that really help to that. So definitely, and there needs to be more of that STEM education from a very early childhood, because that encourages a lot. Obviously, battered off with the support system, battered off with the mentorship of them, then continuously seeing that even if as I'm encouraged, there is light there because I'm seeing another fellow woman. So the answer really simply is definitely yes.
Would you have anything to add, Engineer Prudence? Okay.
Yeah, I do agree. I do
Yes.
agree with Sandra, and I really believe catching them young is the only way to go. As long as they are exposed early, it means they build confidence in working with gadgets, in working with devices, and understanding and appreciating that it's an area which they can venture into. I had somebody once when we had an event at Elevate Trust saying that you look at me, yes, I'm an engineer, I'm this, but I'm still functional. I can still do the same things that you can do. So it's really about, at the end of the day, having learned what you have learned, still being functional again. And then others can also see that, yeah, this can be done through mentorship, through exposure, having, somebody who can pull you along with you. And that is exactly what Stelo has done for me. I remember I was one of the first recipients of the STEM Fem Network Award. I was young back then when I was at HIT. Nobody knew me. But just imagine from that day on to receive an award, it made me to become, a voice for the voiceless in STEM. And today I'm a technology translator, just trying to break down technology in a way that anyone can understand it and consume it and develop, solutions for their problems in communities.
Thank you very much for those insights. I think I also want to just ask, I think among the participants, if there's anyone that may want to pose a question before Engineer Prudence leaves, because she has to be in another meeting. So if there's something that you may want to ask her before she leaves, we still have Sandra with us, but if there's something that they may want to, you may want to just ask now. I think I will invite.
Yes, Dr. Helen, there's a question that I'm trying to help post on the screen. This question is from Abba Sabodan Tata, which says, I would like to inquire about the role of AI in enhancing education for both students and staff, specific learning experiences, improving administrative efficiency, and providing data-driven insight to enhance. It's pretty voluminous, but I believe that we can try and attend to it. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Should I go ahead?
Yes, you can proceed.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Doc. I would say it's important for us to appreciate the fact that AI is a tool. It's a tool just like any other tools that we've used from the time that we started using a computer. And it is a tool that we can harness, to enhance our learning experiences, our teaching experiences. No harm in just utilizing this tool. For instance, if you're looking at utilizing it ethically, I use one tool that is called connected papers as a researcher. Connected papers would then mean if I put a URL or a title for a particular paper that I want as a base paper, it fetches all the papers that are related to this particular base paper. So that can actually help me to reduce the time that I take in doing my literature review. I still go on to read the papers as I normally do, even before the generative AI came along. So I would rather use this AI tool, which can help me to improve my efficiency in terms of doing my research. But I'm not violating anything in terms of, academic integrity. I'm not plagiarizing anything. So I would say these are some of the things which we need to be thinking about very seriously in terms of how we can leverage the capabilities of AI in enhancing our teaching and enhancing our learning. But at the end of the day, as lecturers like myself, we now have a challenge where academic integrity and cheating and the like has always been an issue that we had even before technology. But what can we now do to circumvent, the adverse impact of this? I can just say to you, we might want now to rethink how we can deliver assessments which can, allow somebody to critically think or assess a particular scenario and apply knowledge rather than giving them assignments or assessments which only test the theoretical knowledge which they can easily get from just a simple prompt on ChatGPT or any one of those. So let's embrace AI, use it responsibly, and assure ourselves that this is a tool that is here to stay. Even Google is using AI for different things. They are no longer writing software nowadays, except for verifying and just adjusting. They are also using code generators, which generate AI. So I mean code for them. So why not also leverage AI if you can, but use it responsibly is what we'll continue to say. Thank you for that.
And I'm doing this on behalf of Dr. Helen. If you are in this session and you want to ask a question, kindly refer to the Q&A icon on the Zoom taskbar and put your questions there so we can have it displayed on the screen. So over to you, Dr. Helen, on the procedures. Then we got some few minutes to wrap up the session. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that. I think there was also a comment which says that there's utmost need that's coming from A.G.E.N.D.A. Forgive me if I mispronounce your name. There's utmost need for heuristic instructional strategies like augmented realities, virtual or mixed realities along gamification in AI-aided approach to enliven and enrich STEM education right from basic education, because then this sustains and enthuse the people. So I think it's also even the issues around retaining or interest, nurturing that interest, which is quite important so that they continue to be retained. I think there was the issue of, retention of women and girls, particularly in STEM. So I'm also getting another comment here from Suleiman, who says, well done for this presentation. In Nigeria, we had a World Bank assisted program, science technology program in 2016, which can be reenacted and fashioned to encourage women in STEM, like women in STEM program. Thank you very much. At least that actually shows that, there's some work that is actually happening in different institutions. I don't know, Dr. Dako, do you have any insights in the Q&A?
So we haven't had so much coming in on the Q&A session, but we can just try to glance through the chat see if there's any comment or question that would be of great importance to the discussion at the moment.
Sorry, maybe as we look for the question or comment, I just want to comment on the AI question. So the thing with AI is, obviously, it's like a baby. What you teach it is what it will master, right? And I think this, as we're in this conversation about women in STEM, et cetera, and actually, centering on women, it's also important to look at who is giving it information currently and addressing that gap so that our needs, our problems, challenges are addressed, right? Because right now, for example, they're trying to implement that AI kind of streamlines who gets loans, et cetera, et cetera. Financial inclusion is a huge problem because a lot of women are hesitant to go ask for loans. So the chances of you being declined one because the AI machine that they're using has gone through it are more. A lot of things, disparities are there that also need to be addressed in terms of AI. But as far as that question was concerned, I think for us, we're working with a platform called A.G.E.N.D.A, and one of the innovators actually is a Zimbabwean. It's Dr. Panache Chunge, I think, yes. It's based in the US. And what it's doing is giving you that personalized learning, and it can track the progress of a student individually. Because I was reading the AAU, I think it's for the Africa We Want, the second phase document that they created. They released it last year. And even if we get to 2030, the student-teacher ratio is not going to be okay for us because our population keeps ballooning. So AI could play that great role to cover that. But obviously, you're going to look at the whole idea of awareness, the idea of infrastructure that's coming in place. And those are all the other problems. But definitely AI is the future. And I'm glad to hear that Engineer Prudence is part of the formulating team on AI strategy. And I hope the needs of women and their challenges also is articulated well in that.
I think that's very, very, very important, highlighting what is actually happening and, within the AI field right now, because I think everyone is talking about this, but how it actually, how women and men are affected with some of the developments in AI can actually be different. I wanted to just find out before, Engineer Prudence, do you have extra minutes or you have to rush out?
Yeah, I was just going to say my last words because the others are now waiting for me. Yes, I was going to just say where we are at now, distance is no longer a barrier. We don't have any excuse to say I cannot get into STEM because of A, B, C, D. Like I said, even the government is rolling out for Zimbabwe specifically, is rolling out programs for community networks, even into rural areas. And most people have phones, even in the rural areas. So make use, instead of people being busy, watching pornography and take, the information about drugs. It's better that people then join massive open online courseware, like, the Coursera's, Allison, all these other ones, which you see notifications always coming to say, learn a new skill, learn this skill. So it's now easy for anyone to move from one discipline into another. A doctor can say today, now I want to venture into software engineering. Now I want to be an innovator in this space. So anyone can get into STEM now, even from arts and humanities. If you find an area, for instance, what we're talking about in AI, who can be better positioned to talk about ethics than somebody from arts and humanities? We are not really taught about ethics in computing, for instance. So really bridging those gaps and coming together, collaborating, is what can give us real solutions to solve our specific, problems, like what Sandra is just alluded to just now. So let us leverage these platforms that we have and make good use of the technology that is at our disposal. That would help us to solve many of our problems in Africa, including drug addiction, prostitution, even poverty reduction, because you can still be able to do digital marketing online and thrive in it and make money from that. So I think those were my last words, Doctor. Sandra and everyone else, that's a goodbye from me. Until we meet again.
Thank you very much, Engineer Prudence, for your time and also your insights around, getting more women to participate in STEM. I think we can let you go while I wait for Sandra to also give her, final remarks before we end our presentation.
Awesome. I think for me, really, I would say, let's, as I highlighted before, and I'll quote the STEM lady since this was her discussion, let's take science to the community. That's our theme as the STEM Lady Holdings and as Elevate Trust, taking science to the community. And if science is not creating jobs and solving community problems, then it's not science. It's not enough science. And inviting everyone to join our STEM firm network as mentors. Our model can be copied and done in different countries. We actually hope that this is an African initiative. Our Student Startup Summit, which then works on enterprising these ideas, because it should not just stop at publications. It should go beyond. Is open, and we want that to be done. So I would just say STEM should be inspiring, STEM should be enterprising, STEM should be connecting. That ecosystem is important. Multi-stakeholder is important. So we as CSO, but work with the universities, with the ministry, with private companies to build. And that is the key. You cannot go alone. You can go far if you're together.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sandra. Like you rightly put it, that it's not, something that should just end probably with just universities or, the CSOs on their own. But I think that connectedness, coming together to try and address some of these barriers that we see that are limiting women participation in STEM. And I just want to thank the issues that you were actually raising in STEM, starting from the barriers that we actually encounter. But I think what we actually find in this discussion is there is something that is happening. Institutions are actually doing something. It may not be, it may not have managed to address all of the challenges, but at least there are some steps that are being taken in terms of policy framework, in terms of practice. Engineer was speaking about, gender sensitive curricula. Some were saying, there's also that need to actually train some of the, the faculty members on how to support a female student who is actually pursuing STEM, because of all these other socializations that may limit their interest and even participation within a lecture room. So I just want to thank you so much, even for the work that you are doing, Sandra, in terms of nurturing that interest amongst girls and women in STEM. I think for now, let me thank everyone who has been with us in this session. And thank you for your comments. Thank you so much for your questions, which I think we are saying it should go beyond even this discussion in our different institutions. We need to be talking about this if we really want to support and address the disparities that are within STEM education. So for now, let me hand over to Dr. Dako.
And I would gladly receive it and say that if you have not given Dr. Helen, I would say, a reaction of an applause, please do that, and the team, because it's been a great session thus far. Inspired by the contributions of women in the area of STEM. Inspired by the STEM lady, Elevate Trust, Sandra. I mean, she has really said a lot. You also heard from the other speakers who are sharing their contributions and supporting early career research in STEM education for women and a whole lot more. And I stand as an advocate for women, equality, women growth, and a whole lot more. So I believe that we can make it happen. Dr. Helen, appreciate for your moderation thus far. And I don't know if you have, at this point, it's just for you to give for yourself. You were moderating as well, and you couldn't say anything from yourself. What would you want to tell us all about our expectation towards women evolution in STEM education? Just a piece from you so we can crown it.
Okay, so I think for me, when we look at the issues around participation of women in STEM, if we take it from the approach that we don't have anyone, or it's not me who is doing it, or who wants to do to get into the STEM field. But I think when we look at ourselves and position ourselves as mothers, as parents, as educators for those who want to do STEM, then we begin to have an interest, and we begin to actually initiate certain practices in supporting women and girls in STEM, because there's also this idea that, or the feeling that, when we talk about women's participation or gender equality, it's a woman's thing. But it's actually about us. If you think that you are a brother who has a sister who is pursuing STEM, and then you hear that your sister or your wife is not getting equal pay with the male colleagues, it then it prompts you to actually take initiative and also try to fight some of those injustices. So I think it's about us taking that deliberate approach to say we need to change this, we need to support women and girls. And I think it starts from appreciating why it is important to have women being involved in STEM. Once we understand that they also form half of the population, and therefore their contribution is quite important. So it's also important for me to highlight the need to document what women in STEM are actually also doing, because that's also another thing that we can help to motivate different women to also pursue this STEM education as well as STEM careers, because sometimes their value or contributions are minimized, they are not documented. So you might think that women are not doing much in the STEM field, but I think that is one thing that we can do in our different institutions, to actually document these things, to share what they've done, and go to the communities like what we were talking about.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Helen, for that refreshing information. And this is where we bring the strategies for stimulating women's participation in STEM for sustainable development. And it was championed by the AAU Southern African Regional Office, hosted by the Women's University of Africa, Zimbabwe. And so it's a whole Zimbabwe affair and Africa altogether. Thank you so much for your participation. And if you're waiting on up next, it's another very important session, equally important, also headed by the Afrobarometer. This will be on assessing the gaps Africans look for greater progress on education. And later today, we'll also have the 21st Century Pan-African Education, building strong institutional frameworks for economic and educational advancement by the Marcus Garvey Institute for Human Development and Center for Global Africa USA. We also say thank you to our team from the Women's University Africa for the Just Ended session. And just go for a short break. And this is just a slides video break. We'll be back shortly after we'll find our person from Afrobarometer. So enjoy some of the media interludes that will be coming, and get acquainted on the universities as well, and also what the AAU TV has to offer to you all. I'll catch you just in 5 minutes. We'll be right back.